So let's just start with art form a little bit. What are some of the things you remember that Larry said that struck you? And I'm thinking eventually I want to spin this thing or get us to take into our topic of the question of corporate social responsibility.
He said the question is, who are we?
Question of who are we?
The construction of identity.
Yeah, I had a question about this.
No, we'll come to questions. What do you remember him saying?
Well,
Remember the art form.
the construction of identity.
Construction of identity.
Pluralism.
Pluralism.
Well, stated as a statement. He said the confusion of identity, or a feeling of loss of identity, leads to violence.
Put their ashes on the iceberg for 6 months.
Yes.
Did you say ashes or?
Ashes.
The United States is high school consciousness, I guess, of behavior. What other phrases or things that Larry said hit you? I am the clay.
Some-
Identity could be so important to hold on to that I would harm others rather than rethink my own identity.
Something to the effect of the contemplation doesn't take you out of the world, it puts you back.
Epidemic of individuation.
This is not paradise, where is it?
Yeah.
I'm not Larry Ward. Stuff.
40,000 year of genealogy. Well, where did you find your heart soaring a bit? Where did you find you got touched personally by what he had to say?
I don't know. Excuse me.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know as I was touched by what he said, but I sure was addressed by the way he said it. It seemed to be freer than I ever remember it being.
Oh yeah. It's a different encounter.
Yeah, yeah.
I want my hair like that. Honey, you better change your mind.
Oh, yeah.
It ain't gonna be like that.
I think putting it in this deep context of growing up, of development, and of the earth being an intimate companion. It's sort of a Thomas Berry, the universe is the entity. It gave me a feeling of relief and hope.
You know, I'm a little bit like Joe. The words were certainly impacting, but I was really, I mean, he was like this before a little bit, but not like he is now. Just the dramaturgy. I mean, he talked about being a play, man. He was the play. It was a drama. It wasn't like a speech. It was more like a drama.
Yeah. Yeah. That is for sure. Implications of what he said, and now let's move more towards our question. If you're going to raise the question of the structures of society, and specifically perhaps the economic sector structures of society. What is it that Larry said that has implications for this question of how organizations might participate in what I would call the civilizing process?
Well, I think somehow the market has got to take into account what he talked about regarding individuation. Give them any color as long as it's black or whatever. Doesn't work. It's all kind of personalized.
Someone else, where did you begin to see a connection between what Larry was calling for and this question that we've been wrestling with today?
Well, I think at one point we need to train our hearts and minds, hearts and souls of whole complexity. I think there's a tendency to view business rather simplistic. Simple, I guess. And, you got largely the one bottom line, although there's writing about the triple bottom line, but there's kind of an unwillingness to deal with that kind of complexity, I think. Everything, shareholder value or whatever, people like a formula. And so I think when you try to work in accountability to social needs, the operations of a business and how it could be structured in a better way, it's fairly complex. And people, I think there's not a willingness, and I've noticed that. I think about, I don't want to stereotype business people because I've been in that for a long time, but there's a tendency to just want to cut through, just get it done. And that's a value. But then the question is, how do you hold these other values in some sort of a balance? I think you've got to be careful. You don't go too far or demand too much, because I think that will be destructive. But at the same time, I think you do have to ask business executives and people who work in that area to try to see how they can develop the processes and systems to be more attuned to customers and to the environment. I don't mean the climate particularly, but just the environment of business, social environment.
Larry called for this whole question of contemplation, huh? And then he talked about taking on the meaty. We got to take on this, got to take on that. What does that mean to you? How would you ground what it is Larry was beckoning, or indeed imaging, and the task of this question that we've been addressing? Anybody?
Well, he asked us to take up the discipline of learning contemplation. And as nearly as I'm able to describe it, we don't know much about that. took me 2 weeks in the high southern desert of California before I was able to even get close. And maybe other people who are not so garrulous would have a shortcut, but contemplation is what's a big hill?
Yes.
Well, I have two questions. First, this notion of the loss of identity, he claimed it leads to violence.
Needs to what?
It leads to violence.
Leads to violence, yes.
First, I don't see why that's necessarily the case. Second, it seems to me like it can't possibly be the case, otherwise there'd be a lot more violence going on than we have.
There's a lot of violence going on.
Yes, but there's always been a lot of violence before we had the rapid change.
Depends upon how you define violence.
Well, okay, then, I mean, if you can, and I'll be quiet then.
No, I'm just saying, I think there's an awful lot of violence that is emotional violence. There's violation that we often don't recognize of people, of the planet, of the community, of ideas.
Okay, but why does loss of identity, or loss of the sense of identity, necessarily lead to violence?
Didn't you say to try to protect our identity?
Protect the
People
constructs.
become,
The constructs of
people
identity.
become violent or, you know, and to try to protect this, their own sense of the things they have in their mind
Right.
that they think is who they are.
Mhm.
All the things that,
That's it.
all the belief systems and the conditioning and the religion or, you know,
Maleness, femaleness.
yeah, all these things that I have in my mind to say who I am, if, you know, somebody starts somehow attacking that or, you know, and
Just being different.
and then I'm like, you know, I want to protect that identity. I'm afraid, being afraid to lose that, because then it's like, well, then who am, you know, it's fear. Because then my own fear, my deep fear of that I don't look at, because if I'm not meditating, if I'm not looking, you know, to see, you know, we all have that.
So it's a perception of being attacked or a fear.
Fear.
Yeah.
Well, this may be a little stretch for what Larry was saying, so just say something it is, but maybe it's, I mean, there's a pretty good sense around that we are our relationships. And so therefore, in terms of identity, I am only who I am in relation to who you are. And if you change, then I change. So there's some kind of a threat there. So
What they teach at the Spiritual Leadership Institute in Houston is that many of us have accepted a cultural religion. Our religion is mediated to us through our culture. I'm Baptist, or I'm Methodist, or I'm Catholic, but it's not. People in Venezuela, in Caracas, are Catholics, but they're also members of very violent gangs, but then they go to Mass. It's a culturally mediated, it's not a conscious choice. I'm a Catholic and I know that there are other stories, this is the story I choose. It's a totally unconscious kind of mass consciousness thing. And when that gets threatened, you know, rage from the unconscious comes up. It's not, you know, it's not a a conscious, it's the Jungian thing about, I don't know who you are, but you're scaring the hell out of me, and one of us has got to go.
Well,
I think that's the
it's-
root. I think that's the root he was talking about, but maybe it's helpful to think, he was saying a cause of violence, not the cause of violence.
How about what
And-
happened to Jesus? I mean, he showed up and he really, I mean, I think, just by showing up and saying what he felt was the way life is, that threatened a lot of people's sense of who they were and what their life was about. And they became violent and they put him on a cross. I mean,
I think one of the distinctive aspects of this particularly related identity is business, entrepreneurship. It's an expression of individuality and creativity. And good businesses always seek an identity. And they want an identity with their audience, with their customers, and if they build good businesses, build that into their culture.
You talk about something like Randy?
Packards or
Randy?
McDonald's.
Yeah,
any of them that are really successful, they build they build their culture of an identity that people can understand and relate to.
one of the,
Providing value.
One of the things I was going to share with you is, what does it mean? This is the question I wanted to wrestle with collectively. What does it mean to see organizations with the eyes of the Spirit? And what I mean by that is that most people view life, view things, view their organization, view their situation without eyes of the Spirit. And therefore, their situation has got to be changed. And what I want to suggest to you is that, in my experience, and I was going to share with you some of those experiences, but it is that it's only when you can say yes to your situation, that your situation as it is, in its brokenness, in its ought to be something elseness, is what is loved. And until that yes can be said, then nothing will change. That's what it means to see things with the eyes of the Spirit. And the problem is that most organizations don't want the life they have. They want one that they want to have come. They don't want the one they've got. Most people don't want the life that they've got. They want the life that they hope will come.
In terms of organizations, Jack, how do you hear them expressing that?
It comes with how do they express their relationship to what has happened, for instance. In the organizations that I've worked with, one of the things that we've instituted is what does it mean to have an attitude of gratitude for everything that happens? Because what happens is what gives you the reality you have on your hands. And that is good. And so rather than trying to wish that it was some other way, it's the ability to stand present to what is and affirm it. And what we talked about is traditionally in our language is the point of absolution. This yes transcends the no that you'd like to you want it to be different.
But most organizations, I think you're right, Jack, they're built around, at least they're built around understanding their situation. But at the same time, it's the tension between this present situation and the vision. The value proposition, where they want to take it, where they want to go.
This is where, again, for me, where you want to go is already present. It's already present. The completeness is already there. The wholeness is already there. The question is backfill.
Yeah, well, tell that to the guy in the garage when he's got, you know.
Well, you got to
6
learn
months
how,
of bills,
yeah, that's
and
right.
he's
You've got to learn
$40,000
how do
in
you
his pocket.
communicate this reality. And I've got some things that, you know, we could share on that. But this, I find that this ability to inculcate or to equip people with that understanding is what makes the difference. I can, you know, case study that I was going to share with you is one of these companies that, in one sense, has no glamour to it as you look at it. They make refractories for steel, liquid steel, and all this stuff of how you have to deal with liquid steel. And this particular company called Vesuvius that I had a chance to work with for 3 or 4 years grasped this truth in their organization and began to operate out of that self-awareness. In fact, they built it into their value system. And their value was spirit. We believe that each and every person has a spirit within that is the essence of who they are. We know it is the key to our success in our business and our individual and collective lives. It is the attitude we have in which we recognize the greatness in every person and the possibility that exists in every situation. It is the stance that can transform any situation into one of meaning, care, and possibility. That was one of their 5 key values. Now, they were a division of a company in Brussels. And when Deep Gupta, who is the managing director, would go to them and they'd say, how did you accomplish what you did? And their accomplishments were phenomenal. They went from an ordinary company to leading the entire operation around the world. He simply said spirit. They had no way of grasping what he said. He said, it's just all spirit. It's all how we view things and how we do things. And they couldn't understand what the hell he was talking about. But that was indeed, if Deep was here, he would give you a spin on how spirit operates in Vesuvius, or did, because it has to be constantly cared for, but how it transformed everything. One of their values we call dream. This is the 5th value, which was dream. We believe that greatness only happens when people commit to a dream. We want everyone to experience Vesuvius India Limited as a place where they can actualize their dreams, whatever they may be. Whatever they may be. We encourage people to dream, to equip themselves with the skills and knowledge it takes for that dream to happen, and to take responsibility for its fulfillment. The greatness of Vesuvius will happen when we all dream together, support each other's dreams, and believe in our collective power to make them come true.
Well, dream sounds like vision.
I was going to say, dream like
Yes, but it
There's
was...
a vision, there's an individual in dream.
Yes, this is the
I
whole
think it
point.
was touching on
The
a
whole thing
self-creating
was
person.
based on it. We're going to create a framework in which you can dream. Anything that fits in this framework, which has to do with business we're in, is fair game. And people had absolute carte blanche. If you had to get on a plane and go to China to find out more about your dream, you didn't have to ask anybody.
Wow.
You just went. You just went. And I can verify that Deep would stand up and say, whatever you dream, we can make happen. At some point, you've got to come before us with your model.
I hope.
But at least to start with, dream. And so we used to have dream sessions in which everybody we had stars, we put them up until we, began to see constellations emerging of the dreams. And people would just simply have permission, and they had complete permission to get anybody in the whole organization to work with them on their dream. They were free to recruit whoever they could persuade to come join their dream team. And the only obligation was that if you want to join the dream team, You got to find somebody to do the job you were doing. But it happened because you believed in the dream too. You wanted to be a part of it. And so that organization lived out of spirit in a very, very profound way of affirmation. In fact, we got rid of the appraisal system entirely, and we changed it to what we call the appraise-all system. And it had to do with how do you affirm everything about a person, including their mistakes, including their brokenness, including their struggles. That's going to be part of the appraise-all system. Not critical, oh, you're good at this and you're bad at that. You know, people can figure that out. It's how do we stand present to what they experience as brokenness as being wholeness? That's what people experienced, was wholeness. Not, oh, I could be whole, or I might become whole, or if we can accomplish this, you know, then this will happen. No. It was the yes to what is allows that emergence to happen. And that's what we brought. We changed. Language is important. We changed. Everybody has an HRD department, Human Resource Development. We said no. You know, that's not what you are. We changed the name of the department became HDR, Human Development Resourcing. And the only question that people were faced is, what is the source of your greatness? And you have to find that source. And you tell us, what do you need to source your greatness? If your greatness is within, you have certain skills you might need, and so on. But the whole function of the department was to enable people's greatness. And we call it human development resourcing. Source again. What is the source of your passion? What is the source of your fire? Your fire's gone out? Why has it gone out? Source it, source it, source it. And that's what we did. Anyhow,
It's very important, I think. But I was thinking of how it related back to the how do we measure, and those colder questions we were dealing with before. And there was a study at College of St. Catherine's, I think, the Ethics Center, developed this integrity audit, and I remember being very impressed with it. It was in the 80s. I still want to go back and find it, but they surveyed all these companies that had had ethical crises and handled them badly, and ethical crises and handled them really well. And what they got was this measures, conditions for an ethical culture, an ethical environment. And I think you're talking about conditions for flourishing of a particular kind of work-related set of capacities. And I think it's not unrelated to parenting. You have a negative image, the kid usually lives into it. If you have a positive one, they've got a good shot at living into it. So
it's starting to snow, so take 10 minutes and
wrap
I'm
it
sure
up.
you've got everything.
Okay, thank you. Well, this question of values, which is one of the sources, there are two dimensions that I was going to talk about. One is the expression of spirit, and the other is the sourcing of spirit. And they are in dialogue with each other. There's an expression of spirit, and then there's a source of spirit. And the values are one of the sources that people need to be able to tap or know, and needs to be in what I call about embedded values. What's an embedded value? Well, an embedded value is one that it's not you're striving for, it is. One of the great stories that my guru, Gilles Mahesh, liked to tell was when he worked for Azim Premji, who is the founder of Wipro, one of the giants in the software business of the world now, but of India. He is a fanatic on integrity. Absolutely. We'll never bribe. We never, just period. And Mahesh was in his office one day when one of the top vice presidents of a whole division called up and said, I just wanted to let you know that we've had a major offer, for contract, but they wanted a kickback. Huge multi-million-dollar deal. He said, I told them no, but I just wanted to affirm, just to make sure, I wanted to call you. And what Premji turned to Mahesh and said after he hung up was, that man has to go.
Because he had to call.
Because he had to call, we cannot trust him with this division. He doesn't understand our value. Even though he made the right decision, he didn't understand. It's not embedded. He had some doubt. He had some question. He said, therefore, we can't afford to have him as a vice president. And he needed to be replaced. Mahesh had to replace him. That's an embedded value.
Wow. How to shift the embedded values. Good question.